Hi, and welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm Colin Hung, and today I'm joined by two distinguished gentlemen, Dave Wessinger, President of PointClickCare here in Ontario, and Chris Klomp, CEO of Collective Medical. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Colin.
All right. Well, first of all, I have to say happy holidays. And
you as well.
And Chris, you've got the idyllic sort of holiday background right behind you there, which I am totally impressed with.
I appreciate that. I'm going to screenshot it today as my holiday card.
It's virtual. Don't let them fool you. It's not real.
Children's books in the background.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you again for joining me. And the reason why I'm excited to get together with both of you is because obviously you had a big announcement that happened recently about the acquisition and the merger of two of your organizations. Can you maybe walk me through and our audience through, what that announcement was and maybe a little bit about you guys getting together?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, Chris, if that's okay.
Please.
Just a little bit about PointClickCare and the kind of mission we're on, and then hand it over to Chris and then we'll connect the dots. Hopefully, it will make sense to everyone. As you know, Colin, we have largely been focused on the long-term and post-acute care markets, and in doing that, I think anybody involved in that space recognized that there has been a gap, and we have mutually been trying to fill that gap, and that is gaps in care, that is transition issues, that is really helping and empower care providers through the continuum or a patient journey, with really putting the patient at the center. So for us, although we were focused on the long-term and post-acute care markets, we had been racing and moving towards, in fact, Chris's domain. And that is, how do we connect the ecosystem? How do we help folks to maintain and preserve the life and the independence they deserve? And so as we've worked with our customers, as we've connected them to the ecosystem, we recognize that there is a need for us to connect with a broader network that can bring more lives and more information together to better empower those that are doing this care. And so we've operated somewhat in separate worlds, but as we've thought about the long-term and post-acute care, and I'll let Chris talk about his business, and we'll get back to exactly how perfectly they fit together over time. And maybe Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. So Collective is the leading real-time provider activation, notification, and collaboration platform in the country. We work with about over a quarter of the hospitals in the country, tens of thousands of other providers, lots of payers and accountable care organizations. And we started very narrowly on a subset of vulnerable patients who would bounce from one emergency department to another. And over time that grew to all types of vulnerable populations, individuals struggling with substance use disorder, challenging social determinants of health, those whose needs weren't met by any single point of care, and therefore definitionally required assistance from two or more stakeholders who probably worked with different organizations in different care settings. And therefore there was that opportunity for things to get lost in the cracks, and as a result for the patient to slip through the cracks. And so our whole premise is, if you have real-time perspective on everywhere where a patient is going, you know who they're seeing, you know why they're there, and you know the fundamentals, you can anticipate if something's about to go south. And then with some clever technology, you can find the right stakeholders to intervene and reach out and catch that person before they fall. And so our whole business is built around this. And we've had marvelous outcomes that lead to better clinical care for the patient, and often at lower cost because we avoid medically unnecessary expenditure along the way. But it's relatively surface. We don't use a tremendous depth of data to do this. It's very, very broad. It's a huge network. And increasingly, we found that there's if you think about the definition of vulnerable populations, there's kind of socially vulnerable, and we have senior patients. And we've had a real gap in that latter category, and yet our client partners, our hospitals and accountable care organizations, sit and say, well, our patients are moving across the continuum. Why aren't you there? Why aren't you moving across the continuum with them? Like, why is this a black box? And so we clearly have a gap, and I think that's where Dave and his company come into play.
Yeah, I think if you go back, Colin, we'd been partnering, we've been connecting for a number of years. We're not new to each other. We had been partnering for the last, give or take, 2 years, and really, working that angle as independent vendors partnering together. And as we understood the value in coming together as an organization, we can move faster, we can provide greater insights, we can serve a broader population. And I think independently, we would have gotten there in the fullness of time in some way, shape, or form, but you're talking 10, 20 years from now, we need this yesterday. And so I think the interest in, just parking our egos at the door and recognizing that we're better together than independent was kind of the first step. And then the future we see together in taking these populations, creating that platform together that can serve those that are managing the care across the continuum in a very different way than we do today, allows us to do what we've all set out to do, is achieve triple aim and truly push the individual or the patient in the center.
Well said.
Well, I'll give you the sort of layman's reaction, right? I mean, I saw the announcement that was made. I got excited for both of your companies, but I saw it as, from just looking from a PointClickCare point of view first, to say, look, here's a company that's extremely successful in the long-term care, post-acute care market, and now with the addition of Collective Medical, now they're able to offer something to the acute care market that's concrete, it's useful. Not that it wasn't useful before, but really now kind of targeted at acute and really helping you push more into that market for really the first time. Is that a fair statement, Dave?
That's a fair statement. I would say meaningfully, yes. I think as you talk about acute, I would say it's much wider than that. ACOs, it's health plans, it's
Sure.
hospital systems, it's all of that, right? And so, yeah, I think coming from where we come from, our bread and butter has been the long-term and post-acute care space, but where the gaps are between us and Chris's business, I would say, are those that he serves. And so we, like I say, we had started into that arena to create opportunities, but end of the day, we don't have the channel or the relationships or the connectivity to get there. And Chris has established those over his many years with his team. And so they've got the relationship, they've got the network. We have the insights and the data to share to improve it. It's kind of a natural fit, to be honest. The synergy, there's the Venn diagram is very small in terms of, the excess, if there's any at all. We haven't found it yet. So pretty excited about that. But you're right, it is our first real meaningful foray into that space.
And Chris, I think on the other side, when I look at Collective Medical and what you do, you kind of touched on it. The gap seemed to be in the senior care market, and that was sort of an area that you didn't play as much in. It was much more around the vulnerable populations and so forth, and seniors was sort of a gap. So when I saw and read the announcement, I thought immediately of, wow, you now have access to this wealth of information and wealth of relationships that PointClickCare has established over the years that now can be added into your ecosystem, if you will. Is that?
Yeah, you're spot on. And it's not that we don't do things in the senior care market. I mean, we heard from our client partners, accountable care organizations, hospitals, health systems who wanted visibility, right? The inpatient discharge planner is finalizing a patient. They want to send them to a skilled nursing facility or to a home health expert. And we can't do anything. We're like, well, if they're going to the ambulatory provider, you got it. If they're going to somebody else's hospital, no problem. But sorry. And so a couple of years ago, we did move into this space, and we've got a few thousand skilled nursing facilities, for example, on our network, but it's very surface. And that's not to say that what we're doing with our client partners isn't valuable. They've given us great feedback, but they want more. It's like, okay, great. Now your patient's gone to the skilled nursing facility, or they've left the skilled nursing facility. They may be headed to an emergency room. We can help you there. But from the time that they enter until they leave, total black hole. Like, sorry, can't help you at all. And so PointClickCare instantly solves that problem. I mean, it is the system of record. It has the full clinical record. So now all of a sudden we can sit there and say, hey, you don't need to manage this senior population any differently than any other population in your accountable care organization or health system or health plan. And we're going to give you full visibility on what's going on. They're sitting in the SNF. They're on day 11. Here's how they're progressing against their assessment. Oh, they're decompensating for some reason. You may want to have your care manager get involved and collaborate and maybe realign the point of care because that patient needs some extra help.
Right.
And so now all of a sudden, the patient isn't discriminating between receiving their care in the hospital or in the SNF or at home. And so now the tool doesn't need to discriminate either. And the clinical record doesn't need to discriminate. Wherever the patient goes, the data goes, the insights, the workflow follow. So this is really, to me, about empowering providers with much better real-time data at the point of care.
Yeah, I'll add to that too, Chris, because I think there's something that I don't know that news stories to me, and what typically comes out are, veneer PowerPoints, a lot of things everyone can do, but the reality is the ability to execute is very small, is unlikely, low percentage. I think as we come together with the volume of information we're able to pull together, we have one platform, one cloud-based solution. We don't need to figure out 21,000 times. We plug in once, we have it. Number two is, if we want to gain consent from our customers to share, Chris doing that independently with his organization is a monumental effort to connect with 21,000 and move through. We can do that with the relationships we have to better help them move through it. And I think lastly, the thing, we think about consent as a huge barrier, right? It shouldn't be, and people think it should be much easier, but the ability to activate a network and get information that actually improves care versus just the number one question folks ask today, Colin, is basically, where's my patient?
Right.
And we don't, that's the last question we want to ask. The question we want to ask is not even just how they're doing, but how can I help? Right? And what's the right time to help? And how do you impart wisdom on someone to improve the care pathway for someone? That's ultimately where all of this lands, to not just hundreds of people in a kind of trial, but millions of people. And I think that's what gets us so excited.
Yeah, and I kind of want to ask, that was my next question actually. When we look forward from this point, I mean, it's great that you guys have gotten together. It's great that your two organizations are coming together under one umbrella. The exciting part for me is that it looks like part of the benefit that you're able to provide is that you're filling in and these potential gaps, as you put it, Chris, where people potentially could fall through. We all know transitions of care are problematic. Dave, you and I have had a number of discussions about this over the years, right? Everything from med rec to just getting information off to just, having to put file folders of data of printed documents with the patient as they go from the acute care facility to the SNF. I mean, all of that is going to continue to be a problem, still is a problem. By coming together, it sounds like one of the big benefits is that's now a little bit easier for everyone involved.
Yeah, if it blows my mind that it's 2020 and the majority of hospitals still print out the paper chart and strap it to the patient's chest before they get loaded on a gurney into an ambulance to go into the post-acute setting. It's like, seriously, it's like 2,000 called and they want their chart back. And yet here we are having this conversation. And so that's, to me, is table stakes, but we can solve that instantly, right? This is data. Data belongs to the patient, nobody else. So how do you allow the free flow of data across care settings, right? I would call that technical interoperability. And I think the industry's largely been focused on that now for several years. That's really exciting to me. That alone is exciting to me about this combination. The more exciting thing to me, though, Colin, is this notion of clinical interoperability, which is, and I think Dave is referencing this in several of his points around insights and driving those insights to the point of care. It's like, great. Imagine the free flow of data across all of those different care settings. What do you, as a particular provider, need to know right now to help me, your patient, about what's about to happen to me so that you can keep me on the straight and narrow to health as quickly as possible? That's incredibly powerful. And then, by the way, can we deliver those insights in a way that's most useful to you, in a place where you don't need to go on a mad witch hunt? You've got it right there at your fingertips, where we're anticipating those needs. And then we're giving you recommendations along the way that are clinically justified and validated with a host of evidence behind them, so that you can make really great care decisions much more easily. This helps with provider fatigue. It leads to better clinical outcomes, lower costs. It's the whole triple aim or quadruple aim that Dave's referencing. And I know these sound like buzz phrases, and maybe it's kind of like, overjoyful jubilance, but I'm not kidding. Like, this is the whole mission. Like, this is the whole point of what we do. And this is the manifestation of that.
Totally agree with you, Chris. I don't know who that was in the background. Was that brother Mike screaming for you, or was that one of your own kids?
Yeah, that was your brother.
Yeah.
No, that would be one of my sub 6-year-old children.
I love it. I mean, all really good points, Chris. I guess I would add the mission. What's interesting about us when we look forward, Colin, is these are our businesses are run by people on a mission, right? It starts with us. The reason people are with both of our organizations is we have shared values, we have a shared mission, and we're going out and we're working hard and we're working fast to solve it. And I think as we look at transformation, which is clearly what healthcare needs, we are like critical to that movement. And I would say, if not for sure in connecting these two worlds, absolutely in the middle of it and can do it. But it starts with transparency. And I think as folks are listening to this, providers, care providers, anybody in, if you make that step forward and recognize that hoarding information or keeping it to yourself puts you or anybody else in a better place, it's not good for the individual. And so ultimately transparency will win, and that'll give us an ability to share more information and get the right insights and to those that are truly able to act on it. So that's where I think, we can make a big difference. And I do think understanding where industries are at, they are fairly well digitized. Information is available. There's more we can do. And we're not in the dark ages. We didn't get meaningful use dollars, at least in post-acute care. They have advanced significantly. They have lots of capability and they're prepared to share and be part of it. So it's about floating all boats. It's not about whether Chris and I win or lose. It's really about transformation and doing the right thing. So pretty excited that we share those values and we're both mission-driven organizations that way. So
that gets me excited too, because, as I put it, plugging the holes and filling the gaps, it's one thing. And we all need that. And it certainly, as a healthcare industry, we definitely should fix that. But fixing things only gets you so far, and Chris, you touched on a little bit to say, we got to go move beyond that. We got to get, past the fixing and the plugging of the holes to let's truly get into insights. Let's truly get proactive. How does the combination lead to that in the next couple of years? Like what's going to really move that needle towards that side of things, like the insights, as you called it, to say, oh, you know what, like I can see something's going to go wrong now. I can proactively go and fix that, because we're not there yet. Like we're not there yet.
I can't tell you how excited that question makes me. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say my mind is teeming with ideas. So Colin, I think there's several ingredients. Dave just touched on one, which is data, right? Real-time quality data, system of record, source level data. We have a bunch of that from the acute care continuum. PointClickCare clearly has that from the LTPAC space. So, check that. Workflow, to me, is an essential ingredient. This isn't about separate portals. This isn't about phones and faxes and emails. This is PointClickCare is the system of record for 70% of the skilled nursing facilities in the country. That is their daily driver. And we are deeply integrated into the daily workflow in a variety of different ways, be it the EMR, the population health tool, the Vocera voice box, literally around somebody's neck that we can send a message to, or any other number of in modalities, so that we're meeting the provider where they are. So that's an ingredient, check. This is about breadth of network, so you understand where the patient is going and with whom they're interacting. You have to have the comprehensive picture of the care team, so you know not only what's going on with the patient, but who is best positioned to help the patient, depending on where they are in their health journey or on their path to health. And so check, like that scale actually matters. And then there's an analytical overlay, which is knowing which questions to ask and then knowing how to actually go find the answers to those questions. And so as I look at our own evolution as an organization, we started with very simplistic, at best deterministic risk models to sit and say, kind of if then this, that logic, like if this patient has had 3 ED visits in 6 months, they may have another one. You may want to take a look. It sounds incredibly basic, but it turns out that insight alone, if you've never met the patient before and they just walked in your hospital, is stupidly helpful. But now we're moving to a very different world. We have 400 million plus patient encounters in our data model. And so our ability to look and say, well, okay, north of 88% of the time, we can accurately anticipate if somebody's going to be in a hospital in the next 30 days. Think about that. In real time, no calibration, no delays, no claims information on every single encounter, 88% of the time accurately, we know if they're going to be back to the hospital. And now we can sit and say, okay, we have the context to give the right provider the information they need to say, this is a high-risk patient. The bad thing is about to happen to them, but you can stop it. And here's what you need to know to stop it. That's unbelievable. And it's incredibly powerful, but you have to have all those ingredients to get there. But like, this is not science fiction. What we're talking about, this vision right now, is not a 20-year vision. It's not a 10-year vision. It's like a now in the next few years vision. And I love how Dave framed, like, by checking our egos at the door, and thinking that we needed to be alone in this journey to do it, and instead coming together and saying like, hey, there's some things we don't do so well and we're not as strong at that PointClickCare is much better at, and hopefully maybe a little bit vice versa. We can do this now. Like that's maximizing our mission and doing the right thing and doing well by doing good. And I'm incredibly proud of that. I'm also just incredibly grateful to get to go for that journey, because that's what I want as a patient. It's what I want for my family.
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, no, I'll add to, I mean, I completely, and that's why Chris and I get along so well. I think we see the world in a very similar way, very unique perspectives, but ultimately understand where the opportunities are. And, you know, one analogy I've used recently, which I think actually holds water, is the concept, and I think you can get into the details and you can look wherever you want. End of the day, the patient experience is better, no matter how you slice it. And life does not get harder for those that are caring for them, both the informal caregivers, the family, and the formal caregivers. And to me, that's the mission we're on without question. Those are the people we're trying to serve and empower. So when you get, as I think about today, the model is you manage risk, you don't collaborate, right? You monitor,
True.
right? You don't evaluate, you're not really helpful to the problem, right? And so if I look at the analogy, it's very much, and a lot of things need to happen so you can get cash out of a bank machine in any area of the world at any time, right? A lot of things need to happen. I would say that's how easy we want to make this happen for the care providers. And so under the hood, it may look like a sausage factory. Don't worry about it, right? Things are happening, the right things are happening, and you're getting the right information when you need to. And I think, you know, that the key word there is getting the clinicians, the carers out of administration and really back to care. And when you think about this world and what COVID has driven for us is the need to digitize to share, because you can't share what you don't have. Well, as soon as you digitize, transparency happens, collaboration happens, and you can put models on top to be helpful that ultimately end up in better patient care. So I think that's kind of, and if I even take that one step forward in the near term, Chris and I will be racking our brains as we enable our application with vaccine tracking, how we now take that set of data and make it available to those that need it is kind of that, you know, real near-term deliverable we'll be working on. So I think you'll see it in, you know, working its way out, and we'll ramp it up. But I think there's so much we can do right away. We're not waiting for years to deliver this stuff. It's literally around the corner. And for a big population call, and that's, I think, the big difference. We can turn it on. We plug in once, we plug in, all we really need is for our population of customers to say, yes, please help me. And we're done. And the same goes for Chris. Enable me with more information that can support the patient journey. And not only support it, but tell me what the right optimal journey is for this individual that gets them the best outcome, right? Those are things that we'll be delving into. And these are all near-term things. These are not, if we were thinking 5 years ahead, I'd give us a lot more credit. We just realized there's so much fruit available to us right now to help transform healthcare. It's incredible.
We're getting close to the end of our time, so I've got 2 more questions I need to ask you. But does home care and the desire for people now to have care at home throw a wrench into all this, or is this right in line with what you are both doing?
I don't think it throws a wrench in it. I think, and like Dave's the expert on this subject, and I'll defer to him, but when a patient leaves a hospital, there are a variety of pathways they may take before they've reached their optimal state of health. And there's no doubt, if there's the opportunity to go home and have stable care in a cost-effective manner, that's a phenomenal outcome. And I think that we probably do see continued increase in those opportunities. But there's a very, very clear subpopulation of patients who are not ready to go home, but also don't need to be in a hospital. And probably too many who still stay in a hospital today, who could go elsewhere, who could go to a skilled nursing facility. I don't think that's changing. I'm not sure anybody else thinks that's changing either. And so, but this, what we're talking about, to me, doesn't stop at skilled. This whole vision is all the way to home. And so we serve home health today. And by the way, it's not just to home, it's then back to the ambulatory space, right? It's back to primary care, it's back to specialty care. And those are practitioners who participate on our network today just the same.
I would say, you know, Colin, it's home is where they say home is, right? And so whether that's in a senior living home, at their home, in their apartment, what's interesting about what your statement is, where things fall through the gaps are where you have the most attention, right? Think about that for a second. So you're going to go home and get less attention, less visibility, less awareness. That's where it actually goes up. I think what you'll find though is its technology will be a little bit different there than human entered kind of code, if you will. And so we need to collect information and react to it differently. And so that there are some challenges there, but in the end, there's still, I would say we focus on those that are at risk or complex as really wherever they happen to be. And I think if folks could be at home, we'll support them in that journey, and our platforms will do that without question. So it's patient preference in our opinion.
I love it. I mean, it's just becoming more and more. I mean, this pandemic has highlighted that, right? Where more people want to go, yes, I don't want to be in the hospital for a variety of reasons, cost being a big one, but also the risk of being in a facility now. People are realizing, yeah, there's, I could catch something there, so get me out. Going home is a preference, and so having visibility into that, I'm just assuming that, what you guys are doing together will allow for visibility one day into whatever is used in the home to care for someone in the home setting.
Yeah, I think, the end of the day, there is a coordination platform, if you will. And let's, as we think about what Chris has and the connections in we're to some extent a data source in some regards, and a very powerful one in some others. But there are many folks that will need to come, many partners, vendors, all of us will need to come together to share information from wherever they are, whether it's sensors in the home, right? Whatever they choose that to be, there's a way to get information to those that are providing your care, that it will be either the platform we provide or the aggregation intelligence platform that sits on top of it is how we're going to enable. So I think we're quite agile. We have our fingers in pretty much every care setting today, and we'll continue to follow what's important to the patient and those that serve them.
So final question from me, where can people go to find more information about your organizations? Where should they go?
collectmedical.com and pointclickcare.com, and then call us too. But I think they both bounce to each other, and we're going to be putting a lot more information out.
Yeah, it's all over the news today, so it shouldn't be hard to find, Colin. I'm sure referencing Healthcare IT Today would be a great place to find information about us soon.
Nice plug.
Thank you so much for that plug, Dave. You can tell we've done a lot of interviews together. Thank you. No, gentlemen, this has been fantastic. Definitely appreciate you giving us a little bit of insight into the behind the scenes look at the acquisition and what it means. Frankly, I think that's the more interesting part to think about. I mean, it's great that your companies are getting together, but really more where you're going to take it going forward, I think was really nice to explore with both of you today. So thank you.
Thanks for having us, Colin. It's fun to talk.
Thank you, Colin. I appreciate the time. Thanks, Chris.
Colin.
Nice job.
This is Colin Hung with Healthcare IT Today. Thanks for joining.